Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Toast to the Arts show, where we celebrate books, music, visual, and the performing arts. Welcome to Feast of Words, a books and authors show featured on our Big Blend Radio Toast to the Arts podcast channel. This month, we're doing a 4-part series focusing on debut novels. Part 1 is all about the leading ladies. You can check the episode notes for the link to listen to that. This is Part 2, and we're going into the world of secrets and journeys. We kick off the show with Susan Magestro, author of Priscilla, Breen, Criminologist. Steve Piacente follows up with his debut novel, Bella. Annie McCormick talks about Runaway, Kane, which is book 1 of her Let's Be Frank series. We close the show with D.R. Ransdell, who talks about Amorosian Nights. It's the first of her Campanello travel series. Enjoy the show, hear the authors talk about their writing, their debut novels, and also do a short reading. Welcome, everyone. Susan Magestro is joining us. She's an international criminologist, and she's been doing that for over 35 years. And she's also an author now. Her debut novel is an actual series, the Priscilla Breen Criminologist series, and the first novel is out now, and it's called The Capture. You can go to her website, susanmagestro.com, and as always, the links are in the episode notes. So welcome, Susan. How are you?
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Hey, it's good to have you on the show. And criminology, do people get scared when they meet you thinking, oh, she's going to find it out?
They're intrigued. Tell me more. What is that exactly?
Yeah. Actually, that's a good point. Why don't you tell people what that is as a criminologist? Because there's so many different roles in solving crime, right?
There is. So for me, as a criminologist, my role has multi-levels. First, as an investigator and interventionist, I get brought in, fingers crossed, before a crime to intervene and stop the crime. So I'll work with families and young people. And for me, my focus for criminology is cases involving young people, like school shootings, children of incarcerated parents, kids who kill their parents, things like that. And a lot of rage, explosion, anger. And I work in prisons with 15, 16, 17-year-olds remanded into an adult prison for a pretty heinous crime. That's before. After the crime, I either investigate it or I'm an expert witness in 6 states under various areas of expertise, such as domestic violence, family law, borderline personality disorder, things like that. I also have written 5 nonfiction books in the field. And also as a keynote presenter or presenter in a conference, I'll often sell those nonfiction books in the back of the room, or the back of the auditorium. But now they're available in many different platforms that people could buy because the topics are interesting. So let me just give a plug on the books and then I'll tell you a little bit more. So it's reunification of incarcerated parents with their children, raging from within, de-escalating angry youth and adults, breaking cycles of trauma through a daughter's eyes. And then there's a book of short stories, all criminology related, called Heartfelt Moments, 20 cases, and how people kind of navigated through that to happy ends. And then another little piece called Voices from the Box. So I've done the nonfiction and writing and lectured and a professor in college. So that's what a criminologist does, like 5 prongs within that.
That's amazing. And I love that you're doing this for youth and for families, because I know we've done a lot of podcast interviews in regards to real situations. And in fact, one interview that goes to my mind is a lady, her daughter got put in prison for killing her husband. She snapped. Her husband was having an affair with a coworker and she found them and killed the woman and she just like literally snapped and didn't even remember doing it, until just really went out of it. And then her mom, very spiritual and religious, had to somehow, she still loved her daughter through this. And she wrote a book about it and how to, it's huge. It's a huge
I would
thing.
be brought on all those cases where there's some touch of a child. The child could be the victim, the child could be the witness. So I know exactly what you mean, because the trauma for a child and a family witnessing that is unbelievable.
And people do snap.
They do. Everybody can snap and get pushed into the wall.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for being here and for what you do, because I think it's really important. And I think that crime is, you bring some compassion to the room with this, because I think people weren't born saying, I'm going to be a criminal. I'm going to hurt people,
Yeah.
kill people, shoot people. There's something that happened to get them to that place. And I
And I
think
don't,
it's
when I work
ignored.
one-on-one, especially with inmates who are doing very long sentences, it's not the question of, how did you do this or what's wrong with you? It's more of, how did this happen? And what's the trajectory that led up to it? So when I do lecture, especially to professionals, counselors, police, judges, teachers, social workers, nurses, so they can have intervention, ahead of the time so another kid doesn't get there. So
Yeah.
it's an
A
interesting
lot.
topic.
Yeah, well, we have other shows for that, so you got to come back. Definitely, we'd love to have you come back on those levels. What led you to say, okay, now I'm going to do the fiction side?
As I'm getting a little bit older, I call them my boots on the ground cases. They are very, very hard. As I just said a minute ago, there's nothing good with a school shooting. The kids who kill their kids started my first report on that with the Menendez case on the second
Wow.
trial on that. I had a very small piece of that. So the topics are very hard, very heavy. And, I used to write. I'll go back for a second and tell you, and that it brought it forward. When I was in high school, everybody thought I was going to be a writer because I was the editor of the paper and I had a column. I'm from Arizona right now, and I was here when I was younger. I had a column in the Arizona Republic newspaper. So I was the teen correspondent and had a
Oh,
column.
wow.
So everybody thought I'd write. Well, I didn't. I had some other opportunities that were brilliant, great open doors, and I started the field of criminology. So much so, and so hidden, that my family didn't even know I did this work till I was 23. So I had great placement, two wonderful advisors that took me under their wing and placed me in a way that was not only, such a gift career-wise, it was unusual for women to have that opportunity. So I worked in that field for a long time, and now I just really feel called to come back and do writing. So I created this character, Priscilla Breen, and even on the cover, it says, is it truth or is it fiction? Let the reader decide. So I just felt like I had some incredible stories from all over the world that I've been involved with. And I've been able to take pieces of that and create this character. And I just kind of went with it. And now it is.
Priscilla. Okay, so our mascot as we travel, and our mascot of awesomeness here at Big Blend, her name is Priscilla, and she's a pink sock monkey. She's not a
Oh,
criminologist though, but she is a little diva. But anyway, I got the giggles about that earlier. I was like, this is, cool to have Priscilla in a different light. So she's a criminologist. Priscilla, tell us about her.
right. So I have I just want to quote one sentence um, about her. She explores communities that many unknowingly perpetuate evil. She's one Mormon, flawed, connected, and fearless, exposing the truth while trying to hold her own life together.
So, and then does she learn life lessons as she's solving crimes?
Yes, she does. As she does. And what I really enjoy about her is she does this work. No one would guess she does this work. And so when she's home, and I really tried to bring some humanity to her character, she deals with challenges everybody deals with day to day, being a mom, having children, being a community member. And so Priscilla Breen is this character who goes out. The phone rings. She goes out. I'm going to read when I read a piece about you'll get more about her. And she is a protagonist that has many, many stories to tell. As a matter of fact, book 2 has already been written, called Relocation.
Yeah, so she moves.
She moves. She goes all over the United States and other countries.
Very, very cool. And this one is the capture.
Balancing life.
Now the capture, is she captured or someone who's captured? Or are we allowed to know? Don't spill the beans.
I won't spill the beans. I'm going to read a little piece about how evil can perpetuate in a community. Do we really always know what we see?
No.
So she goes in along with her team. She always has a team. And she goes in with her team and looks at who's perpetuating the evil. And oftentimes we don't really know what we're looking at. And as we talked about before, is it possible for anybody to snap or be pushed up against the wall?
Yeah.
Inmates have taught me well.
I bet those conversations are fascinating.
They are fascinating. I
Yeah.
do have a book down the road coming out about all of my work on the cases with the young people. That's a little bit down the way. But their stories are riveting. Just riveting. And I try to weave some of the people into pieces of the threads of my story. So there's a lot of threads going on through the story.
I bet.
A lot of people who have either beta read it or know of the story. It's just one of those that, you're like, okay, I'm going to read for an hour, and you just don't put it back because I'm going to leave you hanging at the end of every chapter. So I'm warning you. Once you finish the chapter, you're like, oh no, what's that? Now I need to what? And go on.
That's cool. Well, I think what makes it really fascinating is that you come from that background. You have that background, so it's really real, and you don't have to start off doing a whole bunch of research because you've done it. You've lived it, worked it,
And the real gift as well is not just the authenticity that I'm able to bring to the page and to bring to the audience, but the multifaceted of it this way. So I understand the pieces of law enforcement. I understand the various court processes. And then I very well understand all of the facets of corrections, prison, jail, police, halfway houses, anything like that. So I'm able to take 3 of the 4 elements of the criminal justice system and weave it into the story in a way that I'm not just focused on one piece. I'm gonna grab you and then take you to the end. And in most of my stories, you never see the end coming. So I like that.
That's cool. Well, that's the whole thing. I think people do that because they're always trying to solve things. Human beings have that quizzical solving. That's why we love games. It's all, it's cat and mouse, right?
It is cat and mouse.
Yeah, that's what it is. Well, do read for us. That'll be fun. I want to hear.
Okay. I will read just for a little bit what just to get everybody hooked a little bit. Okay. Which of these are true? Everyone is capable of being a killer. Anyone can commit a murder. Who do you believe could not be a killer? I'm here to tell you would be wrong. All of you may be looking at the exact same picture, yet none of you will see this picture in the exact same way. The same can be said of crime. Bystanders look at the same event, yet when they describe what they see, it's always unique and always seen through a different lens. Decades as a criminologist have taught me well, things are not always what they seem. My name is Priscilla Breen. When you first meet me, you will not be able to identify who I am, nor you will glean any inkling of what I do. Because you see, I am a mother, I am your neighbor, and I am your friend. I have great loves in my life, and I'm riddled with passion. What kind of passion? I'm going to let you figure that out. When I stand in line to order coffee at my favorite espresso spot, I am right behind you. I love to cook multi-course Italian meals for my family. My house is filled with friends and family every year on Cinco de Mayo. Everyone swears they're too full from the enchiladas to ever touch the flan, but they always make a little extra room. You might see me kickboxing or stepping into an aerobics class. You see, I blend right next to you until the phone rings and Priscilla Breen walks out the door. Then I would like to just share, if I could for a minute, this particular book capture is, I was being brought into the case 6 months after the crime was first reported. Early in January, on the night of a full moon, the leg of a young female was placed on the edge of a river where the land met water. The following month, February, the story was much the same. On the night of a full moon, a torso was found at a different nearby river, again where the water met the land. Both the girl and the torso belonged to young teenage girls. Their DNA patterns did not match. Similar discoveries have been made now over the past 6 months. The only difference is the month the body part was discovered. All the cuts dismembering the limbs from their torso from their heads, were made with absolute precision by someone familiar with human anatomy. Let's see. I wanted to just share who these people were. Sorry, I thought it was. Here we go. So there's 3 suspects, none of whom you would think it would be. Once we identified the killer in the case, the journey to bring him to justice has been arduous and unbelievable. He's been able to beat evidence even after diaries were discovered and dissected, but yet It was the collective evidence of criminologist experts from around the world that worked tirelessly to gather enough evidence to arrest this unpredictable, charismatic serial killer. How can people live in a community and perpetuate outrageous crime without anyone in the community realizing it's happening? Priscilla Breen will tell you how.
Whoa. So Mayberry's got a killer.
Mayberry's got a killer.
I think that happens a lot, doesn't it?
Yes. And oftentimes, as is portrayed in this particular story, the community has no idea because they're walking right alongside them. And it just is perpetuating and they never know.
Yeah. Ah, okay. Well, I want to read. Are you going to want this in a TV series?
I do.
Like a Netflix or Hulu series?
That's the goal. If I might just make one small pitch about this, book 2 is called Relocation, and it's about 8 people being put in a witness protection. And because of unrelenting torture by a true, as a criminologist, I'm going to portray this in a true way, not verbiage only, psychopath. And what happens when one of the people in witness protection gets very melancholy and then calls the psychopath.
Okay. Well, this is fun. Are you having a good time writing all this? It sounds fun. I mean,
well, I'm really honing in on my writing, skills, which I didn't study that. I studied, crime and people and getting inside people. So it's definitely fun for me, this style. And I have been studying in New York and LA and some really amazing writers that we all know. And so I'm getting better and better that the stories are just flowing, but I definitely have the stories to tell. So with my list of what's coming next.
I love it because when you're solving crimes, you're building a case, right? And then sometimes you can end up in a dead end, just like your reader will go in a dead end. And then it's like, oh, wow, this is a path we never thought. So you have that ability to build a case with the reader and take them on that journey. And I think kind of solving a crime is like writing a book that way.
It is. It definitely is. The timelines you build are very much like the taglines or the beats that you prepare. So it is. And the other thing about Priscilla Breen that'll be really cool is most stories that you read or you watch on TV have the prosecutorial side or the defense side. But Priscilla Breen is able to walk center line. And that means work both sides, not at the same time, but both sides. So she brings the reader into being able to see the solving of crimes, the witnesses and the victims in ways that normally on television you'll see one side.
Okay.
So you'll get to see all of it.
I think that's important because it's, when you look at the how the system works, there's multiple systems. It's not just one system. Just like the medical system. There's not just one medical system. There's multiple systems, and a lot of them completely suck. I'm just going to say that. The medical system, but there's multiple layers to it that we don't all understand. When we're looking at things, we often like to put things in black and white, and that is not reality in anything in life. There's no black and white, so it's interesting, what you're writing and doing. I think that's super cool. And I'm sure, I know you're friends with our friends in the Tucson Sisters in Crime and the Sisters in Crime. They must love having you be part of the organization, right? You're able to offer insights. Have you done any speaking or any workshops with them?
I have. Yeah, I have. It's been wonderful. Like I had said a moment ago, I've been mostly prior to this, in lecturing, teaching, and then writing for the professionals that work in the field.
Okay.
So now I get to work with them as well. And then readers and writers, like I have a class coming up called Conflictology, the art and analysis of conflict for readers, writers, and people interested in conflict. And the first line goes something like this. It takes 2 people to bring conflict, but it takes 3 people to create a mess.
Okay. Yeah, there's something about the number 3. Beautiful in composition, but it's someone always gets hurt with 3. Even in high school, right? 3 friends. You couldn't have 3 best friends. Somebody picked on someone, it never goes as planned.
You just brought up something, Lisa, that I really want to hit on. Things are so challenging right now, all the time, different reasons, but really challenging with young people right now. And I think it's super important in my writing to be able to bring out so many people, I get to reach a wider audience to stay attuned with what is happening with young people and families right now. And that's one of the things that's happening with these books. I have one that I'm just finishing up right now. It's called Shadows of Our Past, and it's the story of 6 different teenagers, all of whom have a fairly infamous incarcerated parent, and the struggles that the children of incarcerated parents go to, and how one woman brings them together, finding out that her own father, when she was 13, she found out her own father had committed murder when she was 2 years old.
That's
And
really hard.
it's this weaving of stories of reality, because for just an example on that one, so many people believe if you're the child of an incarcerated parents, you're from over there, you're bad side, rough side the tracks, and that you're downtrodden and you're not doing well and you're following the footsteps. And the actuality is that's not necessarily true at all. Close to 75% of them are actually overachievers doing very well. And we don't even know who they are, because there's up to 10 million a year in the US. So they're everybody. You just don't know who you're talking to.
Yeah. And there's a lot that goes into, and a lot of people want to be the opposite of what their parents
Right. Right.
they want to be the opposite and prove, no,
Right.
I'm not, so it makes you even extra diligent, I think, with that kind of situation. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And you've got to come back on a show so we can get into the nitty gritties. And everyone, congratulations on the first novel, everyone. SusanMagestro.com. And again, the book is Priscilla Breen, Criminologist, The Capture. So we're happy to have Steve Piacente back here on Big Blend Radio. We first met him with his book, Bella. And gosh, Steve, when was that? 2010?
Probably 8, 9 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a while, but it was with Bella, I believe. That was the first time you came on Big Blend Radio. And this is your debut novel, and you went on to write more novels and a nonfiction book and to become a life coach. And this is all, after being a journalist, right? Am I getting this straight? And let's not forget photography.
Yes. So, toward the end of my journalism career, if I could take everybody back in time for a moment, this was before the digital age. And so reporters were told to write to fit the news whole, which was dictated by the amount of advertising that the paper had that day. So we would get, 10 inches on the new transportation bill. And what I found was that a lot of the most interesting parts of my story were never getting in the paper. And so as I was winding down from journalism, I decided to go back to school and get a master's in fiction writing and sort of develop my fiction writing skills some more. And that's what led to the creation of the novels.
So give us an overview of Bella. I mean, and were you like having to write before you go to work when you were doing this?
Yeah, I mean, you did it when you could. Because we also had 3 small children at the time. So there was a lot of competing interests. What happened was, and I don't know if people could really imagine this, but for a Washington correspondent for a middle-sized newspaper alone in Washington, it's an awesome job. It's very big. You have to have your hands in a lot of different things. So I was always very busy. And one day I was writing a story on deadline and I get this phone call, and it's this woman who's trying to pitch me a story, and I had no time for her. I really didn't want to listen. And she was saying, no, it's really important to your readers. It's very local. And I kind of blew her off. And what she did was she went and called my editor. And my editor called me back and said, Steve, this is a good story. You should talk to her. So when I finally got around to talking to her, I found out her name was Monica Sindrich. She had a husband who had been a military pilot who was killed in a accident off the coast of Africa. And what she was trying to do was get compensation because she felt the military was at fault for the accident. So she was on a one-woman crusade through all these congressional offices to make them force the government to compensate her for a loss equaling what her husband would have made throughout his lifetime. So I started following her around, and it was a lot of compelling stories about that. And then we decided to write a nonfiction book together. The problem came, Lisa, when I wanted to make more of a compelling human interest story, and she wanted to stay focused on the details and the mechanics of how everything happened. And so eventually, long story short, we parted ways, but I could never forget what happened. And so eventually, I transformed her husband and her into these different characters. She became Bella. The storyline became a little bit different. Became about a guy who is killed by friendly fire and the military cover-up that followed, and the relationship that developed between the reporter and the widow. And so that's how it all started.
Now you're taking me back to when you first came back on. When you first read Bella, I'm like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. So all of this is going on. Now you decide to write this because you've already invested so much time in this story, right?
And honestly, I couldn't let it go. It was just something that I thought it was such a stirring, provocative story that it needed to be told in some form or fashion, and that's how I did it.
Now, am I allowed to ask if she won or should I not? I don't want to spill
She did.
beans.
It's all public record. It's all public knowledge.
Okay.
She got an
Good.
undisclosed settlement.
Okay.
And actually, the day that she got the undisclosed settlement was the day she pitched me the idea of writing a nonfiction book. And we spent probably 7 months debriefing and me taking notes and trying to get it all. But we couldn't find a publisher because it just was not interesting. It wasn't compelling.
Yeah. I think she wanted to maybe even help people go through what she did, like go through the steps to get compensation. And yeah, I had a friend who went through that compensation when gay marriage became legal. This couple had been together for almost 40 years. And they're both musicians, and the main breadwinner, he was an airplane mechanic for the military. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Anyways, gay marriage becomes legal, but they had already had their own ceremony years ago, but it was not looked as legal. So, and Michael's the spouse and Spider's the husband. So Spider gets cancer and he has cancer. It becomes legal. They go get married. And then he dies sooner than the 6 months you have to be married to receive the Social Security. And so he dies. And so Michael fights for it. And he was a quiet person, didn't like going out in crowds and everything, even though he was a performer. It was just like, leave me alone, I'll perform. But, he ended up banding together and went through 2 different presidencies and finally won as like a class action suit with a bunch of people who had gone through the same thing. So it just is a long journey, and sometimes you win and then they lost and then they won. It just depended on who was in power at the time. Yeah. So don't give up hope, people listening, if they're going through something like this. It's worth the fight.
Now, I'll tell you an interesting postscript to all of this. When I started working with Ms. Sindrick, she had a small son. And by the time the book was published, it was several years later. And to be honest, she was not portrayed sympathetically in the book. And I took a lot of license. It's not exactly her in the book, but I get an email out of the blue one day, and it's the son who's now on the verge of going to college. And he wanted to know if we could have lunch. And when we had lunch, he asked me, was my mom really that terrible? And it was really cute and really sweet. And I told him, no, Christopher, listen, I took a lot of literary license to make the story more evocative. And so don't confuse the character Bella with your, but it was just such an interesting kind of exclamation point on the whole exercise.
Wow. Yeah. Because you do. And it's really, to me, I love stories that are based on truth, because it's like, ooh. So all right. Are you going to read a little from Bella?
I thought it would be interesting to read.
And you have a prequel to this too, right? We should tell people.
Yes. But, well, no, actually, you're probably thinking of Bootlicker, which came out afterwards. The prequel to that is Pretender.
That's what it is. That's what I got them twirled. Well, you got lots of books.
Bella is a standalone, and what I'm going to read to you is from the very beginning because I thought that's a good place to start. So, she was, as Frost said, an awakener, not a teacher. Now I'm awake, alert even. I'm not especially thrilled that my blissful sleep was disturbed. I was, to be sure, hibernating through life, successful at work, happy at home, content to ignore the chaotic swirl of people and events outside my cozy cave. Now that my eyes are open, I find there's too much light. It gives me headaches. I get angry. But I'm smarter, too, for having been awakened. Most of what I learned during my year of enlightenment may seem obvious. You might think, just how good a reporter could he be if he thinks this stuff qualifies as news? Or you may learn, as I did, that Some creamy, smooth women come armed like bear traps, treacherous, but not appearing so, lest you're tempted to study one nose to tooth and get yourself snapped in two. Such blessed females are immune to the routine plagues: no pimples, cavities, lisps, bad breath, flaky skin, ticks, tummy bulge, eye goo, or gas. Cramps don't attack each month. They pay respectful visits. Gray hair and accursed gravity postpone the day of reckoning for decades, and the more serious diseases pass like picky bees in search of sweeter flowers. A mistake, certainly, for no bouquet is sweeter or more captivating. They can be tall or small, almond or round-eyed, long-haired or short, freckled, pale, sweet, sharp, sluttish, or even a little psycho, but each sizzles. They come in a dozen shades, smell wonderful, tan, don't burn, and blaze through life, radiating presence and beguiling everyone from priest to paperboy. They toss their hair and moisten their lips without looking trite or phony, and when they're gone, they linger in the imagination of both sexes. Women mutter bitch, men murmur baby, unless the ladies they're with at the moment are their beloved wives, in which case silence is especially golden. You know the kind of girl I'm talking about, and yes, of course, there is a male version, and he's just as predatory. My awakener, however, was a woman, and so it is her story and mine that I will tell.
I gotta go reread this now. It's been a while. Do you ever reread your novels?
I'm usually facing,
Yeah.
so I don't go back that much, but I do a book festival every year and we bring out the old books. So there are times when I need to go back.
When is that book festival? Yeah.
It's the last Sunday in April. It's called the Day of the Book Festival. It's in Kensington, Maryland, and we usually get like 10,000 people on the MC, and also the host of the featured authors tent. So I'm interviewing authors all day long.
That's awesome. So people up in the DC area and Maryland, watch out for that. And then are we allowed to talk about that there's some more in the works, more writing in the works?
Yes, I'm currently finishing and trying to sell a book that deals with kind of the current political climate that we're in. And a woman candidate for Congress in the state of Maryland is facing a politician that we would all recognize, or the type of politician we would all recognize. And it's about her chances, her race to win that seat, and kind of end some of the polarization that we see in politics in our daily lives today.
Awesome. I think we all need that. We all need that. Well, everyone, you can go to stevepiacente.com. His books are on Amazon. It is the holiday season, and what better gift than books or music or plants and chocolate? Those all go well together in a stocking. And the best thing about books too nowadays, talking about getting into the digital era, if you're late on a gift, there's such a thing as gifting an ebook, something you can do too. So check out Bella and then the rest of Steve's books. You've got Bootlicker Pretender. And then for your nonfiction, tell everybody about that, because that is something that we may all want to read right now, getting into the New Year's, right?
Yeah. So Your New Fighting Stance is an outgrowth of my life coaching career that kind of gives you 10, 15 stories about people and the toughest thing that they had to overcome in their lives and the lessons that we can take from their experiences. So it's called Your New Fighting Stance. Good enough isn't, and you know it.
And everybody, also piacentephotos.com. That's another great place to go for Steve's photography, which is awesome. I love following him on social media to see everything new, and another great gift that you may have. You may be doing up your home office. Have something inspiring there. So all those links are in the episode notes. Happy holidays to you and yours, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Great to see you, and happy holidays, everybody.
So everyone, we have Annie McCormick joining us. She's a debut author, but not a debut writer. She is a 2025 Page Turner finalist. Her novel just came out, and it is called Runaway, Kane. And if you like a good travel book, like, those road trip adventure kind of stories, and almost like a midlife coming of age story kind of thing,
Yeah.
You're going to like this. So I encourage you to go get it. Go to AnnieMcCormickWriter.com. The link is in the episode notes. As always, so welcome, Annie. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so very much. I am just thrilled to be joining you this morning.
This is such an exciting series, the Feast of Words, because this is going to be happening forever now, and always a new topic. And debut authors is cool because we've got brand new authors like you. And then at the same time, we have authors who've maybe written 20 books. And I'm going, what's your first one? I don't know if I want to talk about that. Because sometimes they've had to republish, but it is such a journey to do that. You've always kind of had a writing background, right?
I've always had I've always had an interest in writing, and it's always been a goal. But writing is a profession. I mean, it could be a hobby, but I always viewed it as a profession. And I'll be honest, I was a little intimidated by the folks whose names we've all seen on the shelves. And I knew in order to do it properly as a profession, I needed to create time to focus on it. And there were previous points in my life where that gift of time to focus on it simply it didn't make sense. And so it wasn't until kind of this third chapter in life, where no pun intended, where I really was able to decide I now have time. The kids are reared, they're up on their own fabulous paths. I've hit all the career benchmarks. I'm going to clear the decks, and I'm going to do the two things I love, which is travel and writing. And so it took the time. Yeah.
I'm seeing this rise of women solo travelers, which you are, and that connects with your story. Though your main character, I don't like saying protagonist, that's like a doctor visit. Your main character is male, so I find that fascinating. But you travel solo, and you're also writing as what your next chapters in life. And what I'm seeing is a lot of women, did the career, did the kid thing, and then it's like, now it's my time.
Now it's my time.
A lot of women are just like, I'm leaving the husband at home, or, partner at home, and I'm doing my thing. And doesn't mean they don't travel with them, but also writing, whether it's a travel writer, whether it's writing books, being a poet. I just see this rise of women going, I'm finally getting to be me.
Absolutely. And there are a load of women. I've been very fortunate in that I've got a platform on TikTok that has kind of counted or recounted this journey. And I'm reaching out to or connecting with, or the algorithm is sending me loads of women who are in their third chapter and who are trying to recapture the imagination we all had as our childhood, where you can be anything. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be the home plate umpire at Wrigley Field, right? You can imagine being anything. And then you hit that second chapter. This is the exact conversation I had last night. You hit that second chapter where you got to execute against that dream, right? You've got the job responsibilities and the kids and the football practice and the ballet practice and all of that. And then that gets done, and you've got the sense of accomplishment. And then you go back to imagining again. But now you get to imagine with the benefit of kind of wisdom and experience, right? The likelihood of me being a home plate umpire at Wrigley Field, pretty slim. But you can imagine, or I could imagine other things and feel like it was possible. Yeah.
We have technology too. I know there's the anti-AI thing, but there's also a lot of pros to it if you learn how to do it. I just think it's who's got the controls with the prompts. That's it.
Yes.
Like we could have the devil hold on to those controls and prompts, and then we wouldn't have to kill the devil. So I know a lot of crime writers who'll take care of that. But at the same time, but we got technology, but we've got like the internet changed everything, and also we're living longer. We're healthier. I think medicine and health. All these things have made it more possible than what it was like for women 50 years ago.
Absolutely.
Hiring and doing whatever our husband says.
Yes. Oops. Or we all thought Aunt B was where we were going to find ourselves, right? Taking care of somebody else and making pies. And don't get me wrong, I loved Aunt B, but there's more to life than Aunt B and your hair in a little bun and your frock. And if you want to do that, there is a path, but there are 101 other paths that you can follow that are open to us. Yeah, absolutely.
And I know that you're using TikTok, and I hope I don't know what's going on with TikTok. I started and then I'm like, no, I'm getting off it again. I don't know. I'll see if I'll go back on there. But I did get a lot of views way back when I first went on there. Kinds of things from our travels and nothing to do with our business. And then I took it all down because, all the craziness with it. And now we'll see. We'll see. I think I'll go back. We'll see. But you do a lot there. You do a lot there. And
I do. Yeah.
See, that helps as a writer, too, for people to get to know who you are. And you do a lot on your travels. This is the thing, Annie. Annie's very connected with what Nancy and I do traveling the country is you do the world. Pet sitting through trusted house sitters. We can give them a shout out. And
every chance I get, I do. Yes.
Isn't it awesome?
It's incredible. And when I tell people what I do and how I do it and the platform of trusted house sitters that makes it possible, they're all waiting for like the catch. Like, what's the catch here? That can't be. I'm like, there's no catch. This is about as simple and obvious as it gets. It's homeowners who love their pets but need to travel, and it's travelers who need a place and love pets, and the intersection of caring for the pet and travel is where everything works. It is extraordinary. Yeah.
And you get to write in different places, which means you're moving out of your comfort zone, even though
Absolutely.
it's what we do. We like it.
We love
but
it.
the views, haven't you had the most amazing views to write from?
Oh my God,
Helped you.
absolutely.
Has it
And
helped you?
it
You
has
know,
helped me
right?
because part of some of my characters will do some traveling, and we're going to find a couple. We might find Frank and a few others in Ireland in book 2 or 3. We've got some others that are going to find themselves in France as a result of storylines unfolding. And so the ability to do that there, and you kind of, when you're, I mean, living like a local is one thing, but to be able to write write about France while you're sitting at a table in a cafe in France is going to give it a whole level of depth and authenticity. I mean, you can replicate a lot with YouTube and research and all sorts of things, but to be actually there and hear it and the nuances that come from that, you simply can't replace that with anything. So yeah, it's lovely to be able to bring it all together.
Well, okay, so Runaway Kane is book 1 of the Let's Be Frank series.
Yeah,
And that's cool too. I just like that. Let's be frank. All right.
Let's be frank.
Let's just get on with it. So give everyone an overview so I don't give any spoilers or tell everybody things I shouldn't.
So one of my favorite pieces of work ever, and I've certainly read the original text and I've watched every variation in film, is the story of Ebenezer Scrooge, right? Ebenezer is just this miserable, mean-spirited, narcissistic pain in the ass on some level. And everybody knows that about him. But the nephew believes that there's some good guy in there that if he could only get to it, right? And that's why he invites him to Christmas dinner the next day, because he knows there's a good person in there. And Ebenezer, over the course of his night, is visited by the 3 ghosts, as we all know, and he has this transformation experience, and he wakes up the next morning the man his nephew always hoped he would be, right? And that's the magic. No spoilers. We've all seen The Christmas Carol. Oh, I think that story's just left this indelible impression on me. So Frank got so, in true story, I got so mad at the guy I was dating in an exchange of text. I was in Florida. I was flying back. Whoever sat beside me on the plane, I'm sure still talks about it. I sat down on the plane in the center seat, popped up my laptop, and I fired off 20,000 words, which was the start of this book, before we landed in Chicago. I mean, I was flying. Now, those 20,000 have since been cleaned up and rewritten and reordered and added to. But it was that I was so frustrated with this person because I knew that he was a better guy than what I was seeing in the text. But anyway, so that started it. That started this story of Frank, who is just as a result of an experience becomes this mean-spirited, self-absorbed pain in the ass. And because he makes everything about himself instead of staying to resolve the issue, he takes off. He buys an RV. He's never sat behind the wheel of an RV in his life. Buys an RV, takes off across the country. And similar to Ebenezer, right, there are a couple of encounters that give him moments of reflection that force him to look at a couple of things. Of course, he pushes back. And the goal, as we go through this series, is that we get him to be the guy we hope he is, right? We want him to be this good guy.
So you're
I
rooting for the
don't know that we're
underdog,
going to
and-
get him there. I don't know that
Yeah.
we're going to get him there, but we want him to be that guy. And so it's that cheering for this pain in the ass that you still kind of want to sleep with, maybe, that is going to be the piece that draws you through. And so we're hoping that we can get Frank to where we want him to be. We want Frank to be a good guy.
Well, and I think travel does that too. It gives you these moments of reflection, and solo travel is an educator.
Absolutely. And there are times when he needs other people. And in an RV, having never driven one, there are times when he needs help with just the most basic things. And then there are times when he finds himself in a position where somebody needs something he knows. And suddenly he finds himself in a place where he can kind of give back or pay it forward, which is not necessarily how we think he's wired. So there is this push and pull most of the way through book 1, where every now and then we get a sense that, okay, he could be that good guy. And then he just blows it all up again. He just does. He's,
This is
he
fun.
just can't help himself.
This is fun. Now, you're going to read a little bit for us?
I am. I'm going to read the setup. Well, I did. Can I tell you 2 minutes a little bit about how I got to what it is I'm going to read to you? Wrote the piece, had it edited, the whole 9 yards. It's independently published. And I have a TikTok platform of about 100,000 followers. And I built all of my social media when I started pursuing life as a writer, because I ultimately wanted a potential audience of book readers, right? If I didn't have the desire of writing and publishing, I'd have kept my one little Facebook account where you found your high school friends, and that's all that's on there, right? So this swath of 100,000 plus people are not only a potential audience, they're a potential focus group. So I put a request out to the group. I said, okay, you guys have watched me kind of do the writing. I need a small focus group that will help me. Does the story hold together? Does the story appeal to you? And then I needed them to help me with some cover design and the name of the book and the name of the series. Well, 400 people raised their hand and said, I'm in. And I was like, the samples lady at Costco, right? People were just lining up because they were going to get the book for free. So I sent them back a note and I said, no, I need you to do, honestly, a couple of things. And what I mainly need you to do are participate in 3 TikTok live focus groups where, without giving away the ending, we're going to talk about this character. We're going to talk about the name. Does the name fit? And so I hosted 3 TikTok live focus groups. Nearly everybody in the focus group that had signed up, they're all listed in the back of the book as Team Frank. That's their list. That was my thank you to them as I listed them all on there. So 70 of them worked with me, and we did. And the prevailing comment, the one comment actually that summed the whole thing up perfectly, and I've used it over and over again, is this is The Big Chill meets 50 Shades of Grey.
Mm-hmm.
This story in this series is about a group of 55 to 60-year-old longtime friends that have been in each other's lives for forever, right? They're each other's godparent, and they stood up at each other's wedding, and they were the shoulder when somebody cried. These are people that have known each other basically their entire adult life. And that really resonated with the focus group. They were telling me, we don't see lots of 50, 55, 60-year-olds having a great time and great sex in real life. We're not seeing
One
that.
has to update 30-something.
Maybe that's what we should call this, 60-something.
60.
It's 60-something. And so when this one lady said, this is The Big Chill meets 50 Shades of Grey, she absolutely nailed it in that one sentence. And I think that's what it is. So what I'm going to read you. So when they did the focus group work, they loved the story, but they needed a bit of background. They needed to understand how and why these 5 people were in each other's lives, right? They needed a little bit more connection that I had provided at the beginning. I initially had that farther down the road as the story unfolded, but what I heard and what I was so grateful for was they really wanted more of that on the front end so they could take the leap and just ride off with Frank, knowing the why. And so that's what I'm going to share with you. It is a direct result of that focus group, and it's what came about as the prologue of the book. So let's say March 27th, 1990, Binion's Bar, the Hyatt Regency in Cincinnati. Love Shack was playing overhead. Mike Emick thought it was a really odd choice for a bar in the Hyatt Regency. He hadn't been in a lot of hotels in his 24 years of life on this earth, and after the Holiday Inns and Howard Johnsons of his childhood, this place was seriously uptown. He expected more classical music. Mike looked around the table. After a long day of presentations and networking, he was still in a suit and tie. It was the annual law review conference. Some of the smartest law students from around the country came to this conference. His faculty advisor made him do it. It looked good on the resume, and the trip was paid for by the law school. And there would be girls. As a 24-year-old law student who hadn't had a date since the spring formal in college, the notion of girls in a hotel in a strange city was a pretty big deal. The bar was full of budding young lawyers. The Ivy Leaguers hung together, as if hanging at the Hyatt was beneath them. In a corner were the students who were clearly second and third generation law in their family. Mike wasn't sure what it was that connected them and drew them to each other, but he knew that as a first-generation Irish American of 2 blue-collar parents on a full scholarship to bowling law in Florida, he did not have that intangible quality that suggested a distant relative had signed the Declaration of Independence. Anna Mae Wentworth was sitting across the table from him. She definitely gave off that air, but she seemed to have no interest in that group. He had never met anyone quite like Anna Mae in his life. She was a third-year law student. She might have been there on an academic scholarship. She was brilliant, but money wasn't a worry for her. She just had that look. She was a little bit older than them by a few years. She carried herself with confidence. Mike didn't see any of the girls he knew. Mike didn't see in any of the girls he knew. She was slightly terrifying, truth be told. You knew if you went up against her, you were going to lose. In a courtroom, shooting whiskey, on the golf course, and the thought of her in bed gave Mike pause. He would have loved to have gotten laid while he was here, but Anna May and her southern drawl and brilliant mind made it the most intimidating thought he ever had. He wouldn't be very comfortable going up against her in a courtroom, and in the bedroom he wouldn't keep up. Jeff Schuster and Amy O'Leary were clearly dating. Odds are they had been together since prom. They had that all-American clean-cut look to them as individuals and as a couple. They went to law school in Wisconsin, Marquette maybe. Jeff looked earnest, hardworking, and easygoing. He was the smart guy you'd almost miss. He was a huge build of a man. He was built like Bluto, and his grip nearly broke Mike's hand when they first met and shook hands. If he was here, he had to be smart. Just not much evidence of it yet. Certainly, if it was clear that if he had picked Amy, he had to be smart. Amy O'Leary was soft-spoken, tall, and reminded him of Kirstie Alley a bit, that shoulder-length brown hair, slight build, and outgoing smile. As editor of the Marquette Law Review, she had to be a brilliant law student. While it seemed that all the girls made him nervous, Amy didn't terrify him the way Anna May did. She was kind, probably one of the nicest people he had met at the conference. She was, however, clearly off limits. That giant Jeff dude would crush him like a bug if he made a move on Amy. If Mike was ever going to bring a girl home to his mother, he really hoped she'd be like Amy. And that prologue kind of does a little bit more to knit them all together. And then from there, we switch to present day and the story unfolds.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
That's exciting. It's exciting. So are you writing the next one?
I am. So I'm working on two things right now. I've got an audio version of this coming out. So we've got this out in paperback and ebook, which was kind of fun to do. There's such a learning curve as a debut author to not only the writing of the book and getting it in the end zone, but then the production related to the publication. So we've got print and the Kindle version available, and then we're working on an audiobook. I've had a ton of questions about when are we going to get an audiobook out.
Yes.
That was another question I asked the focus group. Who voices it, a man or a woman? They all wanted a man to voice this book. So I've got a male voice that's going to voice the book, and I'm super excited. And in the meantime, I'm working on book 2. And each book kind of plants some seeds for the next book, right? I think in the video gaming world, you call them Easter eggs, right? So as I'm writing book 2, I need to be thinking about 3 because they all set up what happens in the next book. So I'm head down on book 2 and giving thought to book 3. Yeah.
Now tell us about the Page Turner finalist. How did that all happen? What was that about?
So I've had 2 projects in front of me as I've moved through being a writer, right? The one is the Runaway Kane, the Let's Be Frank series. And I wrote that pre-COVID, in all honesty. And I initially got some advice that a female couldn't write a male protagonist. And I took that to heart because it came from somebody whose opinion I respected. And while I didn't love it, because that made no sense to me, I'm also so new in the field of writing that I just wasn't sure how to think about that. And so I just parked it. And so a friend of mine is an author. She teaches internationally at conferences around the world. Her name is Anne Garvin, published author. And Anne was teaching at a conference in the south of France. Karen Carbo hosts this conference. Karen is a well-known author. And so Anne wanted a travel companion to the conference. And so Anne and I went to the south of France and then up to Paris for 2 months. And I wrote with her as my coach. And then she taught at the conference during the day. And I gave her my homework on my little side project. And that book, it's called You Can't Not Go, is it feels a little bit more traditional and therefore felt a little bit more like it lent itself to the more traditional path of querying and agents and publishers, right? So Runaway Kane felt like a great opportunity for me to independently publish, while You Can't Not Go ran parallel. And I'm hoping experience from both paths kind of informs the other, right? I'm hoping we get some momentum there. But You Can't Not Go was in the process of being pitched to agents. A lot of it takes place in Ireland. It's just second nature to me. And so I was pitching it to agents here and in Ireland, and I learned of the Page Turner Award. And what I love about the Page Turner Award is you can not only submit it for consideration, which is in and of itself a tremendous opportunity, but the judges, the panel that evaluates, are agents, publishers, and screenwriters. And so it's not at all unusual that they see something in their role as judge that they might want to consider in their role as an agent and a publisher. So you're kind of short-circuiting that query process and you're getting it right in front of some people. And so for that reason, I submitted it. And because it's set on the other side of the Atlantic, right? And I thought the authenticity of that might resonate with them. And so I have no idea how many, I think it's several hundred, went into the category of new author, new book, but they cull it down to a short list of finalists, and then they further cull it from there until they select a winner. And I made the list of finalists. I was absolutely astounded. So there's another round or two where they will continue to cull that list. And then there was the opportunity to have some of the folks that participated in the judging double back and do a critique of it. If I didn't make it to winner, A, why didn't I? And B, what would this need to be tweaked to be considered? So that felt to me like a really kind of productive process on so many levels. So that book is over there, and I'm not going to pull it back out and query it again until it goes fully through that cycle. But I can query it with the credential of page turner finalist. I think
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's an international contest. It's a little bit of a big damn deal. So I was really excited. Yeah. So what a moment, right? Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, everyone keep up with Annie and go to her website, Annie McCormick. Annie McCormick writer.com is the website. Go check it out. And thanks so much, Annie.
This was delightful. Thank you so much for making time. Thank you, Lisa. This was lovely.
Happy travel.
Yep. Same to you. Same to you.
So Dr. Ransdell is back here on Big Blend Radio. She has been on shows with us with the Tucson Sisters in Crime, which means she is a sister in crime, so watch out. Do not read her Google history, but if you do read that, it could get gruesome, but I would suggest reading her books. She has around 10 novels. We were trying to count them up, but neither one of us can count, right?
We're not math people, we're word people.
We're word people, and you're a musician too. So that's part of it as well. So music and writing and teaching and travel. Have I got this down?
I think you've got my number.
Well, good. Well, today we're going to talk about your debut novel, which turned into a series. And was there a lot of crime involved in this one? Or is this...
This was a straight novel. At the time, I'll give you a little bit background for it. So at the time, I'd played in a mariachi for about 4 years, and it consumed all of my free time because mariachi, nothing's written down. You learn by ear, or I would take a tape recorder to the restaurant and tape what we did and then study it from there. Well, anyway, in the meantime, I went on a university trip to Greece, and we went to a bouzouki tavern one night, and it was so cool because what I found out was that even though Greek folk music doesn't sound like Mexican folk music, it's played with sort of the same spirit. People go out for a good night, for a good time. They're drinking, they're dancing, they're staying up late, they're singing along, they're stamping their feet and all that stuff. And it was just wonderful. And I felt a kinship with these Greek musicians, even though I didn't know what they were saying at the time, but I knew how they felt at like the end of the evening after you've been playing for 5 hours and then people want to hear this song again. So it was really fun to experience that same musical culture in a totally different country.
Okay, wow. So this is fun. So you've done the Greece thing. Well, Greece is, and the whole culture and the food and the music and the throwing plates. Did they throw plates?
I've been at places where they did. In the novel, I don't think they bothered to throw any plates in the novel, but I have experienced that. So that's really funny too. Yeah. The idea is, I don't give a damn, bam, and then they throw down a plate. I don't know. It's kind of funny, but they do.
I want to tell everyone the novel is Amorosia Nights, and it is in the Campanello travel novels. And then there's another one, Thai Twist. You've got 4 in this series, right? Caroline Chase and Olive Envy. I don't know. Martini may be involved in that. But you've got 2 ladies in there, Gina and Rachel, who take you traveling, right? So who are they?
So basically, you're always writing about yourself in one way or another. So Rachel is basically me. And in Amorosia Nights, I give her a dream job. Only a workaholic would like this. But she goes to this Greek island to have a couple of weeks of leisure time, and then the band winds up, half the band members have to leave, and so she gets this job in a band. And so for a musician, that's a dream job. Then the other sister is really basically a version of my sister. Right after she finished high school, I got to take her on a trip, and we went to Greece. So I'd been there a couple of times by then, so I kind of knew my way around. But if you can imagine, I'm 9 years older than she was. She just graduated from high school. So it was so fun to travel with her and see how somebody who was 18 would see things. I
Oh,
saw
that's
things
cool.
differently by then. But that's how I came up with the character of Gina. So when I send Gina to Thailand, she goes with Rachel, but we're seeing her sort of naive take on things. And, she's innocent and also optimistic about everything. And that changes your point of view. Kick around the block a few times and you get a little bit less trusting of people.
I know, I know. Okay, so you got the two ladies and two sisters, and they take you around. So Ambrosia, I would say, why do I want to say Ambrosia Nights? I don't know.
That's a real word instead of a made up one.
Well, hey, I don't. Well, tell us, what is the title about? Since I can't say it.
So, Amoros is an island I made up at the time. I was pretty naive, so I didn't want to make mistakes. I didn't want a reader to write back and say, "Oh, you put that piazza in the wrong place, and it should have been over here." So I made up an island in the Dodecanese chain, so an island near Rhodes, and I called it Amoros just because I don't know. I like the sound of it. It's almost like the word for
Yeah,
amor, but not quite. But the problem is that, yeah, you're not the only one who has trouble saying it. So it wasn't, commercially, it wasn't a very good title, even though it was fun to make up a Greek
it
island.
is a fun. I like the name, and because it does kind of have a little naughty and romance and fun and just happy. It's got a little bit of everything there. So just because I couldn't say it right off the top of my tongue doesn't mean it doesn't work. But and by the way, I change names all the time, so I'm notorious for it. So I give people new languages, I create my own languages. It happens every single day. And then at the end of the day, I have a glass of wine and go, now I have the excuse. But
There you go.
that's my excuse. But writing the novel, what was the inspiration to even become an author? Did you ever think growing up that you would become a writer and an author?
So I think I was in second grade when I came home and I guess I'd started a story in school. And then I came home and I finished it. And I told my grandparents I was going to be an author. And I think the story was called Samantha the Martian. And Samantha came down to the elementary school and she substituted for the teacher for the day. That was my little story. So yeah, I'd always had aspirations about writing. But the problem is, as a writer, is that you really do need a day job too. So, so I've had various day jobs on my way to, working on writing. I really love language learning. I got exposure when I was young because my dad was teaching Spanish and German. And so we would go places
Wow.
so he could work on Spanish like the summer I was 10, we spent in Mexico. The summer I was 8, we spent in Germany. And I don't remember that as much. But by the time I was 10, I was taking in some things. So I went on to major in Spanish. I've always been fascinated by the process of language learning. And it's something that comes out in this novel about Amorous because she goes to this island. She's trying very hard to learn Greek, which guess what is not that easy.
No.
Unfortunately, the vocabulary is completely different. Silly me. I thought, okay, well, I speak Spanish. I know a lot of Italian. I've studied German. Greek can't be that hard, but it is because the vocabulary is just completely off the wall. I thought there'd be a lot of cognates. There's like every 100 words, there's maybe one cognate with Spanish. So anyway, it's a long road to learning Greek. But I wanted to learn Greek because I fell in love with this music, the sound of the music. A lot of the songs are in minor keys. And I don't know, I just became enchanted with that.
Yeah, the minor key is a cool key. You know what I mean? It gives you that little edge again. We're not going to
Exactly.
we're not over chirpy, but we're giving you kind of a little mystery.
Yeah, there's a lot of Turkish influence in the music, actually. So I think that's where some of those minor keys come from.
Oh,
All right, just to give you an idea, in mariachi music probably play maybe 85% of the songs are in major keys.
hmm
And in Greek music, it's more like 80% are in minor keys. So they really
oh,
like minor keys.
well, they're
And
getting down and dirty.
great
Well,
in the
well,
morning
that's
with
it.
you.
Well, I love this because I just did a whole podcast recording today on Turkish wines and the history of wine in Turkey. It was
Oh, there you
actually
go.
really fascinating. Really, I mean, so ancient. It's one of the oldest grape growing, wine growing regions in the world. So, all right, well, this is getting better and better. Sounds like we should have a vacation plan next. Okay, there's another novel in that, right? So when you travel, do you think about Gina and Rachel when you're traveling?
When I went to Thailand, specifically had in mind that I wanted to do a book about Gina. And so while I was there, I took a lot of notes. I might have started writing when I was there. So I really had that in mind. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. The last one in that series, Olive Envy, that you mentioned, it's actually, I put it together after teaching in Italy for about 7 years. I've had a chance to teach in Orvieto, which is a little town close to Rome. So that book actually came out of a series of summers that I had a chance to really spend quality time in that area and understand more about. I'm a whole quarter Italian, so that gives me even more impetus for wanting to understand about it.
This is so much fun. Getting started on the novel, what was it that said, okay, I'm going to write this novel now?
You caught me there. You caught me red-handed, not having any idea, not being able to remember. But maybe I would say because I'd come back from this trip with the university and it had been so much fun, just so invigorating to be there, that I think probably what happened was I just imagined, what's the best possible thing that could happen? Going to Greece, getting into a band. That's like your fantasy.
So then you write it out as a fantasy, and then you start. So you actually work on this novel while you're doing, I know from before in our conversations, doing your dissertation, you're writing a novel at the same time. Most people would say, like, what were you thinking?
And actually what I was thinking, the dissertation, it was not a pleasant process. It's supposed to be fun. My chair said, oh, it's fun to write your dissertation. No, it's not. Because somebody's always telling you how to do it every 10 seconds of the way. And, write an outline, and, this isn't right, and start over. So at least when I got to my own little world of writing about Greece, in my own mind, it was, hot summer, beach, music, good food, friends, and I could forget about all that school stuff, at least for an hour a day. And I really needed that escape.
What turned you into, I'm going to publish it now? Because that's a whole other thing, too.
Yeah, doing enough drafts to feel like it was ready. Like I said, I put it down for a while, and then I had to get a job, and then I had to start the job, and that's always difficult at first. But then when I had a chance, when I kind of had the job going, I was teaching writing up at ASU, Arizona State University, but I had a little bit of free time, and I went back to the novel. So what happens as a writer, sometimes, you'll write a draft of something, put it down for a while, and then when you go back to it, you're like, yuck, do something else. But instead, when I went back to it, I liked it, but there was a lot I needed to do. So then, 7 or 8 drafts later, then I started sending it around to people. It got picked up by Creative Arts Book Company, and they published it. But then, about 6 months later, they went out of business. Not my fault. But anyway, things never quite happen the way you're expecting them to. But that's another story. That's pretty normal. And you have to be ready to pivot.
Yeah. And so you managed to get hold of the book and still have it out there for people, right?
Right. Well, then later, for Tight Twist, actually, a company picked that up too. And then they really liked Tight Twist. It won a little contest with their company. And then after a while, I can't remember, 3-4 months, maybe it was longer than that, they sent me an email and said, you haven't sold enough copies, so we're dropping your title. Here are your rights back. Do what you want. So then I just published them both on Amazon. So I wouldn't have to argue with anybody or fight with anybody. So sometimes you have to do that too. These days.
Well, yeah. You have control.
A lot of people do hybrid stuff. They have some things on KDP or some things on Drafted Digital, some things with the company. You just have to find the way you can fit in.
I think so. I think that's the thing. Whenever you're at somebody else's, beck and call, it's not fun. Musicians go through this all the time, as we know, right? So same thing for authors. So, well, you're still here and you're still writing and still going. So you're successful. You're always happy, which I always love that. Whenever you come on the show, I'm like, all right, we're going to have fun. This is going to be a good one. So now let's have a reading if you don't mind.
I would love to. And so I'll tell you what, let me pick it up. A couple chapters in. So she goes to this island. She has a friend that lives there, and the friend has 2 young kids. So she's going to stay with them. So they go to the taverna every night to listen to music. So they go in. Let me pick it up here so the band is playing. And now I'll go into the novel. Then a customer asked for Capuzas in Antistume, which means sometimes we'll get together, a duet by Miliocas. It's a cute song in which a married couple tried to schedule time together, only to realize that whenever one wasn't busy, the other was. Modern life. I'd found a version on YouTube and listened to it over and over. Vangelis, the band leader, questioned the other musicians, but they shook their heads. They were familiar with the tune, but they didn't know the words, so they couldn't please the customer. Alex, Eleni's son, looked up from his toy cars. My auntie can sing it, he said. He knew because he'd helped me translate the harder phrases. Vangelis looked over as if we were both crazy. The musician stood motionless for a second, perhaps contemplating the worst possible scenario, which would be that I didn't really know the words and sang off key. I started to get up, but stopped and settled back down. To look nonchalant, I finished my brandy in a big swig. Vangelis glanced at the other musicians, silently questioning their opinion, but they were non-committal. Had I been wearing a smart black dress, at least I would have looked Greek. But jean shorts and a striped blouse shouted American. You know the words, he asked. I nodded. Sol, key of G. His eyes widened. Back home, customers often asked to sing, but they never knew their keys. Instead, in the mariachi, we had to guess, so usually the singers got stuck growling words that were too low or squeaking ones that were too high. The fact that I knew my key meant that there was half a chance I could hack my way through the song. Vangelis beckoned me towards him. Sol, he told the others. And he started playing.
So right. I've done that. I've done the squeak.
Yeah, that's what usually happens is if people come up to the stage and they don't know how to sing and they're drunk, usually they do. What's really annoying, so in mariachi, I played in a restaurant. We played a long time. And people would come up and want to sing, and they usually didn't know their keys. They didn't know the words. And then when they messed up, they would look around at us like, what's the matter with you guys? Anyway, it's always dangerous when guest singers are around.
Yeah, I just always knew, I never put the key name with the key. I can't explain that. I'm a singer, and I just never, very like audio centric. So, and I did learn proper key, like how to read music and all that kind of stuff. But when it came to singing, I just would match it. And then, well, I can't sing that because it goes there. And I remember going in a blues club in LA, Babe and Ricky's Blues Club. And you don't want to mess with the mama. She rests in peace to the mama, but she ain't resting in peace because she was the mama. And our friends or a blues band were playing, and I had a band and everything, and they were like, oh, come up on stage. And I'm like, I don't shaking my boots with her because people made or break. Like it was just and it was just incredible blues club. And I got up there to sing. And Johnny, my friend, Johnny Master and the Mama's Boys, shout out to them. He's like, what key, Lise? And I'm like, just play it. And I squeaked. And he looks at me and says, you need to learn your keys. I'm like, I know, but I'd done all these things and actually some really big things and yet didn't know my keys. So I wasn't drunk either, but I was going to, after that, get drunk.
Well, to this day, like when I go out and play mariachi gigs, we don't have a restaurant anymore. So we just do gigs. We'll do an hour here for a quinceañera or here for a wedding or usually at people's houses or maybe at a venue. But I keep in my pocket a list of the song keys for the songs that I sing because I know a lot of songs, but I can't remember the keys offhand always. Or if I get nervous, then I can't remember what key it is. So if I have to, I just look it up and then I've got the information. Really, it's a little cheat sheet. I just keep in my pocket all the time.
See, there it is. Very cool. Well, everyone, you've got to go to dr-ransdell.com to keep up with Dr. Her books are all there, all 10 plus. I think there's more than 10. I don't know. But there's a new one that's out now, so go check that out. And of course, the link is in the episode notes. Always good to have you on the show. Thank you.
So much fun to talk to you.
Thanks for listening to Big Blend Radio's Toast to the Art Show. Please keep up with us at bigblendradio.com and keep up with Big Blend magazines at blendradioandtv.com.